listening to us. My name is Edson Ochoa, co-host of this, the Down in the Valley podcast, the Valley's only RGV specific podcast. Great to be back for another week of talking about the RGVFC Toros. Great news, guys. We are back in the playoffs for 2 straight years, which has not been done in the history of RGVFC. And today we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, we're going to be talking about last Saturday's match between RGVFC and Monterey Bay FC Union. We do have a special guest today who will be joining the show at around 8:30 to talk about He'll be talking with us about the upcoming match, the playoff match that on Saturday between RGVFC and Colorado's Springs Switchbacks. His name is Ben Currie. He is a member of the Trailhead Supporters Group, and he will be coming on, like I said, to talk with us about Colorado Springs and a couple of other topics. Today, as every week, I am not alone to talk Toros with all of y'all, and let's go ahead and give a huge welcome to our co-host, Jacob Young. Jacob, how are you doing?
Doing well. Looking forward to talking soccer. It's been, I guess, a long time coming. For us to finally get to the spot for this show to technically continue on past last week, which is always a plus when you're still talking about a team that's still somehow, some way surviving and heading to the playoffs.
So, right off the bat, let's go ahead and start. Actually, before I do, quick invitation to everybody that's watching us right now on YouTube and on Facebook. Be sure to put it in your comments any questions, any comments that you have on any of the topics that we do talk about. We will mention that if we have time. And kind of discuss on it a little. Obviously, any topics that we bring up, whether it's in the section of Quema no Quemaca or any other moment, or if you have any questions once Ben Currie comes along, be sure to put it out there in the chat. And if you guys miss any part of it, obviously go into Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting platform. You will find the audio version of this episode right there. And if you're listening to the audio podcast, don't forget, every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m., we do go live on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Down in the Valley, or you can find us on YouTube. Just put the handle at Down in the RGV, same as all of our other social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, TikTok. But let's go ahead and get started with the show, Jacob. So right off the bat, man. So last week, it's the last week of the season. Technically, RGV had like 95% or 97% probability of making the playoffs. However, at least for me, there was still a little bit of nervousness there because there was still a possibility of RGV not, getting the unfortunate combination that would keep them out. What was your outlook going into this match?
I mean, going into this match, I can tell you one thing. When we got off the air from recording last week's podcast, I was nervous. I think I was more nervous than the players. I mean, it took me back to 2018, that dark September day in 2018. For people that know, they know what I'm talking about. I don't think that I have to explain it too much, but yeah, it took me back to there because it's like, what if RGVFC, what if this team that has been so great at the end of the season don't show up against a team that can be very vital and amazing? Like, they ended the season, I think, at a very good, at a good place to build for next season. That's Monterey Bay. So it was just one of those situations where I barely could handle it, especially even getting to the stadium on Saturday.
Yeah, I at least, like I said, for me, there was that doubt, but it was more along the lines of I just wanted to see this game, get it over with, because I really wanted to have the opportunity for the team to make it to the playoffs once again. And you know, as the time went on, as kickoff was growing closer, for some reason, like I started actually more because I started seeing like all the results that were happening because you had the game against Las Vegas versus LA Galaxy 2, which was going to happen like in the middle of the Toros match. But before the Toros match started, you had Oakland Roots going up against Pittsburgh Riverhounds. I know right in the beginning, Oakland was winning 1-0, I think. And then all of a sudden Pittsburgh kind of, took the lead 2-1, I think at a moment. So that was actually that. I think that seeing that kind of gave me a little bit more it calmed me a little bit more because it felt like everything was going to fall into place for RGV to make it to the playoffs. Now, pretty much what we needed was for the Toros to do their part on the pitch. And boy, did they end up doing their part at HB Park. So right off the bat, starting 11 for this team, you had Tyler Derrick on goal. That's really not a surprise. Jonathan Ricketts, Akeem O'Connor Ward, Frank Nodarse in place of Wahab Akwe. That was a surprise, honestly. Surprised not seeing Wahab Akwe in the lineup against Monterey Bay FC. No explanation was given as to why, but we'll get more into detail as we touch up on that subject later on. Erik Pimentel, the other center back, and then Juan David Cabezas. Then up on top you had Ricky Ruiz, Gringo Torres, Jonas Fielberg, Frank Lopez, another surprise over Christian Pinzon. And of course, Juan Pablo Torres. That was the starting 11 for RGVFC. But right off the bat, two surprises that I think caught us off guard, if I recall correctly, because I think you mentioned something too, and Ray did as well, by the way, who's watching right now. I think that caught Ray off guard.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a little bit crazy to see him back in the lineup. Frank the Tank Lopez finally back in, and that kind of got me a little nervous, but at the same time excited. So I was just like, well, that's normally good that he's back, but is he going to be that person that we know and have loved seeing? Can he just all of a sudden knock off this rust and be this electric player? Of course, you and I, or at least me, I haven't been to practice that much, so I didn't get to see him actually in action. So most likely, of course, once you get back in the starting 11, that means that you're 100% and are ready for fitness and everything like that. So that's a possibility of how it all went. Maybe he just wanted to train a little bit more on his own, and there was no. It seemed like there was no headbutting with the team and with the coaches, because once he was back out there, he had one goal and one goal only, and that was to be a playmaker and help this team out. I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but it's true when that's what you expect from this guy.
Yeah. So Ray, he says that Wahab was in a rest situation because of minutes load, same as Christian Pinzon. So just trying to give minutes as well to Frank Lopez and Juan Pablo Torres, who needed game minutes, which makes a lot of sense. I know Christian Pinzon had played almost, I think, outside of the game against Memphis. He played almost like since he was here and officially available to start for the Toros. He had been playing most of the minutes. So I think what caught me off guard as well is that I felt like, maybe Wilmer Cabrera kind of figured that putting Frank Lopez in was also going to be at a huge advantage for the Toros, and that's exactly what ended up happening. We'll talk about that right now. So right off the bat, RGVFC comes out strong, as is usually normal for the Toros in this season. They have the first clear opportunity in the 5th minute. You see a long ball by Jonas Fielberg leads to a one-on-one opportunity that Frank Lopez is able to receive, dribble into the box, gets knocked down by Hunter Gorski, And the referee calls the penalty. Gorski gets a red card for denial of goal scoring opportunity. And eventually the ball gets into the back of the net. Obviously, Juan Pablo Torres gets the rebound from what's his name? Herrera, who's the goalkeeper for Monterey Bay. He gets the rebound from the Herrera save, and he puts it into the back of the net, gives the lead to the Toros 1-0 very early in the match. And that partial score was giving the Toros a very positive a very positive outlook in their search for playoffs. At least it would give them an opportunity, depending on the result by New Mexico United, it would give them an opportunity to probably even make it up all the way up to 5th place in the Western Conference. So like I mentioned during the week last week, I didn't feel like the Toros were going to settle with just we'll make it anywhere, wherever, 6th or 7th, whatever. No, they were actually going, at least it looked like for me, the mentality is let's try to get as highest as possible, the highest position as possible going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that was also I think the scariest part of what I was fearing was that RGVFC especially weren't going to try and get that top. Maybe Wilmer was going to sit back for a while at home and do counterattack and say a draw is just enough that we need. And that's 100% of why I think I was definitely that much more nervous, because when you have a chance not only to control your own destiny, but also to get 5th place, if the team that we're playing against decided to actually play soccer, then maybe, it would just make the fans and everybody feel much more comfortable that you're going to get into the playoffs safe and sound and most likely get 6th and not have to play against the toughest team in the division for two rounds, just in case you knock off the 2nd seed. You don't have to play the 1st seed the next round.
Mm-hmm. So after the game, we talked to Frank Lopez in a press conference, and in regards to that goal, that first goal, he said, we always analyze the teams just like I guess they do with us. And we knew that their center backs were not quick. Jonas kicked the ball into space, and I knew that I was faster, so I kept running. Knowing that Hunter Gorski, was slower than me, I touched it and placed my body in front of him. If he didn't foul me, I would have been left one-on-one against the keeper. I felt that he grabbed my shoulder, and I let myself fall. Thankfully, the referee called the penalty. So you could tell, and that's what I was mentioning a little while back, where I felt that Wilmer Cabrera, number one, gave a rest to Christian Pinzon, but number two, he probably saw that with the characteristic of Frank Lopez, who is a central striker than Christian Pinzon is, he saw the opportunity of trying to beat them with their speed, because that wasn't the first or the only time where Frank Lopez beat the center backs with his speed. I think earlier before, if not a little bit after, there was another play, another long ball. In fact, it looked like the center back for Monterey Bay was going to have clear possession of it. And I guess he was overconfident that nobody was behind him. Turns out Frank Lopez, with the speed, kind of sneaks past him, almost gets once again one-on-one against the keeper, except that he just didn't have the angle, and the center back didn't take the bait to foul him. But you could see that was their intention. Their intention was try to take advantage of that speed advantage by Frank Lopez over the two center backs from Monterey Bay FC Union. So a couple minutes later, it was I want to say it was the 33rd minute, Frank Lopez gets his goal of the night off of a beautiful assist by Jonathan Ricketts. Jonathan Ricketts, one thing that caught me off guard is how wide he was. And you know how I've always talked about it with how in American soccer, it always seems like the back line is too condensed into the middle. We saw that with RGV when they played against Louisville. And in this game against Monterey, RGV, Jonathan Ricketts had the similar tendencies as that outside back from Louisville. Stay as wide as possible, go up and help out on the attack, and try to find those crosses. This time, I don't know what Herrera was thinking. The keeper. I don't know if he just thought that that was a shot by Jonathan Ricketts, but and he ends up diving this way. It was a typical FIFA goalkeeper AI situation where you're just wondering like what the hell was he thinking? But Jonathan Ricketts gets the cross in, and Frank Lopez is able to get to that ball first. Meet that ball first and put it into the back of the net. Now here's the interesting data, Jacob. According to FOTMOB, Ricketts had the most chances created in the game with 3.
Yeah, that's not as much as kind of expected for sure. With 3, I mean, you'd think it would be more for sure, but that's of course, I guess, a plus when sometimes you get chances created. As long as you're able to take care of those chances and put them in the back of the net, then I guess that's enough. But I guess just being greedy, I'd like to see more than just 3, but it is definitely an interesting fact.
Well, considering the fact that he's a defender, I mean, his primary objective isn't to create chances up on top. That's more on Jonas Fjellberg and Christian Pinzon or even Ricky Reese. In fact, Ricky Reese has a bigger responsibility since he is a more of a winger or more attacking oriented to create more chances. But that at least that gives you an alternative, right? If you're seeing that Ricky isn't finding the space, and you're noticing like you've got Monterey's down a player, right? So there's gonna be spaces on the field, and you're seeing that their tendency is to stay compact in the middle when they defend. Obviously, who's gonna be out wide that'll come in by surprise? Jonathan Ricketts. Jonathan Ricketts comes up, gets the cross. Nobody was expecting him. Boom, goal for Frank Lopez. Right before the goal, it was officially announced with the Oakland Roots loss that RGVFC had clinched the playoffs. And even then, I'm telling you, RGVFC didn't care and continued to press Monterey Bay FC looking for more goals and try to get themselves in that good situation.
Yeah, and that's when you can say this team is a veteran team. This team is everything that you could definitely ask for, maybe one more player in there. But yeah, you said it best. Any other team would have seen, oh yeah, we're clinched. Okay, we can back off and take our foot off the pedal, and it doesn't matter anymore, even if we were to give up the last 2 goals or 3 goals to lose. It didn't matter to them, and that's perfect for this team just in general, because they still had an opportunity to once again move up the standings and maybe even get a 5th place. And that's always a plus too of not settling for just that. And I think, we've learned so much about this team, and that's one of the things. They're veterans. They're not these rookies that we once had in 2018 where they just decided, okay, yeah, we got the lead, let's back off, or decided to go with that. And that's also considering Wilmer Cabrera too. We've seen that before, and one of his tactics is get the lead and then back off. And thankfully now that's also changed. So it was all a plus to see that team keep it going, all gas, no brakes. I hate that saying, but it definitely reflected there on Saturday night.
So you touched upon a good subject, right? You talked about Wilmer Cabrera and his tendency before to kind of be a little bit more conservative. We saw that from him from the Houston Dynamo. And you saw even with RGV in his original stint, it seemed like it was Jekyll and Hyde for the Toros. At home, they were like this beast that was very aggressive. Whereas on the road, he was a little way more conservative, more of holding back and try to go for the counterattack, like especially with the Dynamo when he had Albert Elise and Romel Kyoto. It was hold back, see how much we can hold defensively, and then try to beat him with the counterattacks, right? And whereas at home at BBVA Compass at that time, he was more aggressive, right? And one of the things that has been mentioned, but not only by us, but other like more national pundits, is Wilmer's RGV of this season. They actually have a lot decent or even better results on the road as well, which is a good. I think that's really really good how Wilmer in that aspect is kind of involved from his previous stints with other with other clubs, and it's kind of like I said, like you mentioned, it's kind of helped shape the identity of this RGVFC of not being able to, or not just settling for the bare minimum, but to go, as much as you can, but not going too crazy. How many times did we also see with previous Toros of 2020, 2019, where the Toros, like you mentioned, had the lead and then they made all these dumb mistakes, or they were losing and then all of a sudden, like the team was running around like headless chickens, and they had no idea how to react to to adversity, and they end up getting pummeled like 3-0, 4-0. This team is a lot more centralized, a lot more focused, and that shows the level of maturity of our veteran players. So, but moving on, Jacob. So 60th minute, Ollie Wright gets a fortuitous deflection from the Monterey Bay defender Hiro Toyama, deflected the cross into the net. And then later on in the 92nd minute, this was already in stoppage time, Akeem Ward had another fortuitous play. And when I say fortuitous, I'm not meaning in a despective way where they just got lucky. No, they went out and looked for it. They looked for these opportunities. They forced the defenders to make these mistakes. What happened in Akeem O'Connor Ward's goal? Well, the attacker for Monterey Bay, who had no choice because at that point, Monterey Bay tried to do damage control at that point, right? They didn't have any gas left to continue up on the attack. So Walmer Martinez, who's technically an attacker, he was out there defending a cross that Akeem O'Connor Ward had received inside the box. Martinez tries to clear that ball out, but the only thing that it does is that it deflects off of the foot of Akeem O'Connor Ward and into the net. 4-0 at the 92nd minute, and that was all fine and dandy. However, the Toros did have a little slip right at the very end. I want to think that they were, how can I say it? They probably was like, oh, this game is over. So it's like there was a miscommunication between Jonathan Ricketts and Tyler Derrick, right?
Yep.
So it was a long ball that was trying to find a lone striker for Monterey Bay Union. Jonathan Ricketts easily got to that, and he tried to kind of chest it back towards Tyler Derrick so that way he can grab it, kind of waste a little bit of time, and boom, the referee blows for the final time. Easy 4-0 win for the Toros.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Tyler Derrick wasn't. I don't think he was aware that was Jonathan Ricketts' intention, and so when Jonathan chests it down, Tyler Derrick just kind of lets it go past, and there was the striker there who just pounced it and put it into the back of the net. One thing that caught me was that at the beginning, you kind of Jonathan Ricketts and Tyler Derrick, they were kind of looking at each other like, what the hell? Why did you do this? Why didn't you let me know? And then you see Tyler Derrick is like, all right, yeah, it's my bad. That's my fault, right? He took the blame for that play. So
yeah, it was strange. It was as strange as can be for that play. There's not much else to say besides I guess we've seen that all year, technically,
Mhm.
with mistakes close to the end of the season, or not season, but close to the end of the game. And I mean, it stinks that they're still happening, but even Tyler Derrick said, it was his fault, which we just didn't want to see that happen in general. I mean, we had the win locked in, but it's stuff like that that can cost you wins, especially at the end of the game. Let's say RGVFC are up 2-1
Mhm.
in Colorado Springs. And then that mistake happens. Back of the net it goes for Colorado Springs. It's 2-2. We're heading to extra time instead of a victory at the end. That's the only issue, but I'm sure both of them have talked it over and have gotten on the same page, because even from that, there's only up from there, from making a mistake. So that's
Yeah.
always definitely a plus for players to be able to say, okay, yeah, my bad. We'll get that fixed up for next time. So there's, which, write this on one of those boards or something like that, because this might sound good. There's always up in mistakes, because it can only go up from there, from that moment.
Yeah. So one of the things is this is a quick observation, right? And then I want to give some final statistics that kind of caught my eye as I was researching the stats of this game. So by the end of the second half, Monterey Bay, you could tell that a lot of the players were already unmotivated. There was one player that caught my eye in Akima Connor Ward's goal. He the best way I can describe it is he did a what was that? Garrett McLaughlin. He did a Garrett McLaughlin where the ball like rolls past like right near him, and he's just looking and just walking. Like literally, he was just walking on the pitch. You could tell like he was unmotivated, like he had already lost hope for the cause of his team. That's not RGVFC's fault. You just got to take advantage of that. But with everything that was going on with Monterey Bay, it was a really really hard hit for them. But I was telling you about some statistics that caught my eye. So for the Toros, 10 shots out of the 20 total were on target in this game. 50% shooting accuracy, 92% passing accuracy in the whole game. That's amazing. That's like Charlie Ward's level of accuracy. Now, here's the best one. We were talking about questions like, why wasn't the Wahab Akwe playing? You put in Nodarse, right? Guess what? Frank Nodarse won 6 duels in this match, 4 clearances with a total of 8 recoveries in that back line. Best defender in this game for RGVFC. We've gave him so much slack or so much flack, but he continues to prove us wrong, which I'm extremely, really happy. So, having said that, Jacob, real quick, any final thoughts on those statistics?
I mean, it's amazing. Imagine that. All they needed was more play time, and you'd see a big improvement in this player, which is it's spectacular. That's what you want to see, especially in the USL, because guess what? Most of those players that are younger than David Basis age and Tyler Derrick age want to move up. Some of those players are at their, this is probably where they're going to retire, sadly. But not to say that they didn't have a great career. So it's just with the players that we pick up, we always want to see them improve and not stay stay at the same place that they are, stuff like that. So very glad to see that he's improving. Maybe he's got a home for the next year. Hopefully, maybe he can come back. He's a good bench player and soon could be starter, even though he's gotten a couple of starts.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll go real quick with these couple of topics that we want to say if we agree or disagree real quick. So just give me the first thing that comes into your mind, okay? All right.
All right.
So, Quema no quema ka. Erik Pimentel asked to take the penalty early in the first half and subsequently gets his shot blocked by Carlos Herrera, the goalkeeper. Agree or disagree? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with his decision or do you disagree?
I think it's fine because, again, we saw that the keeper just guessed right. I think it's unlucky because the pace on the ball was good in my eyes. And, I mean, he struck it well. So I agree with that. If he doesn't take it next time, that's fine. But I'd rather see it, on target and has a chance at a rebound. That's all you can really ask for if it doesn't go in the back of the net.
Okay, then I ask you this question. Then should he have been played a little bit more safe and had the attackers take the shot instead of Erik Pimentel? Now I definitely get the thing, right? Which is you're gonna give it to whoever is motivated at that moment to take the shot. And that's exactly what Erik Pimentel did. He was motivated. He was eager to shoot that penalty. And obviously good. His teammates are like, all right, go ahead. We'll give you the benefit. We trust you, right? To be able to get that shot. But so you're okay with Erik Pimentel, taking the free kick instead of, let's say, like Frank Lopez or Jonas Fjellberg.
Yeah, I think so. Because, I mean, he proved it at that night. It wasn't in the back of the net, but he gave an opportunity for somebody to rebound and put it in the back of the net. And again, I think that's all that you can ask for because the keeper tried to save it and did.
All right. One more question because we actually have Ben Currie waiting for us to talk about this Saturday's match against Colorado Springs Switchbacks. So my final thing for Quema no Quema. RGVFC's front office has found a marketing foundation that helped bring in more fans this season and can be used to improve attendance numbers for next year. A little bit of context. Average attendance for Toros in 2021 was 3,030. Average attendance of 2022 was 4,074.
Yeah.
Last two games, we reportedly hosted more than 5,000 fans in each game.
Yeah.
Agree or disagree?
Oh, by far do I agree. I mean, hey, it's crazy. They have a phenomenal foundation to work on even for next year. I mean, I love what they are doing now. I love what they are doing. But as always, just like this soccer team, they can improve even more. I think the $5 tickets are perfect. Maybe lower down the concessions just a bit. Maybe make a beer night when you score a goal or something like that. Like I think who was that? Phoenix Rising did, or San Antonio had.
Oh yeah, $2 beers.
Exactly. Maybe something like that. I know crowds would probably get rowdy, but hey, why not try something even crazier? So yeah, I like where this is definitely going. Marketing just needs to continue on and maybe even push once this season is complete. We get into February or January, start to advertise from there. I don't know how big the budget is, but I mean, yeah, just continue with this momentum because we want that to be close to 7,000, 8,000. And if this team is really good as well, 10,000.
So I'm looking at the chat, and Reyes, obviously Mike Reyes says, "What's up?" By the way, what's up, Mike? Glad to see you joining us. And I think I also saw Johnny. And I think Johnny also he actually had a comment. He said RGV going to surprise a lot of people on how far they will go into the playoffs. But regarding this latest topic, Ray says, "No quema. Sorry on the marketing. I disagree." Why? The statistics are there.
Yep.
The attendance greatly improved from last season. So clearly they must be doing something right in some aspects. Yep. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that marketing could definitely improve, right? When it comes to the social media outreach, when it comes to, advertising, but we've seen an improvement when it comes to getting the players out to the community, getting to know them,
Mhm.
And all of that. In that, it has improved, and you see the numbers, they've improved. So
Yep.
I like to see why Ray thinks that this is he doesn't believe this is it.
Yeah.
So so yeah, having said that, let's go ahead and jump towards the beans and potatoes, or the beef and potatoes of this show, which is the outlook to this upcoming game between RGVFC and of course Colorado Springs Switchbacks. As I mentioned, we brought in a special guest to talk with us tonight about this upcoming match, and that is none other than Ben Currie from the Trailheads supporters group of Colorado Springs Switchbacks. Ben, how are you doing?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Real good, real good. Tell us a little bit. Tell us and the audience a little bit about yourself. What do you do? How long have you been a member of the supporters groups? Yeah, let us know.
So I've been with the supporters group for about 2 years now. I came aboard kind of right as the new stadium was opening up. I'm one of the Kilted Hooligans, so mostly, I'm just kind of a noise guy.
Mhm.
Kind of just doing all the exaggerated stuff over in behind the net.
Yeah. So and I think I've seen you mentioned to me via message, and as well I think I've seen you tweet as well that you've really gotten an interest into wanting to start your own podcast for the Switchbacks.
A little bit. It's kind of just been a bit of a loose idea. I mentioned before I do a lot of audio work and things of that nature. So there's, a little bit of an interest in just trying to break through into kind of like a media landscape. It's a bit more just kind of like a idle brainstorm kind of thing, I guess.
Mm. Yeah. Well, if you ever decide to do it, you've got obviously our support, and of course all of the other USL podcasts. They're always very eager to have a new members of the family. So if you ever decide to do one, we will help you out the best that we can to help you grow within the USL environment. But let's get to talking a little bit about this upcoming game, Ben. So real interesting, right? Because I know I was watching the preview show from Devin Kerr and the other USL pundits, and they were talking about how Colorado started off this season with a bang. I think they mentioned that it was one of the best starts in USL history for Colorado. Then all of a sudden it felt like they kind of plateaued like really early in the season, and kind of struggled for most of the second half. What can you tell us about Colorado for as a fan?
I think a lot of where, kind of that plateau came in is we got hit by injuries pretty hard. And it was less, oh, we had guys out for the entire year, but more like a key guy would be out for a couple of weeks. And then as soon as he's back, somebody else goes down. So it wasn't as much too many long-term injuries, with the exception of Zach Zandy, who I believe was, hugely instrumental to how good that start was, and doesn't kind of get talked about enough with all the sparkle factor sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But, there was just accumulation of just a lot of horrible injuries at the worst possible times. The main one that I think of, and kind of, when that really great streak ended, it was against San Antonio at home, and Cameron Lindley and Zach Zandy had both gone down. And while Cameron, came back kind of quickly, that was sort of the first one. And then as soon as, someone else came back, and then, it was Dennis Erdman who went out for a little bit, and then he came back, and then, Mahoney comes out for a little bit, and then he comes in, and it was just a little bit of a snowball effect, in addition to, just kind of everything else that was going on with all the, attention on Barry and the attention on everything else at the club.
So you mentioned Haji Berry right now. Haji Berry has been one of the best players that the USL Championship has seen. I think if you were to name, if anybody outside of Colorado Springs fandom can, they ask you of a player that you know from Colorado Springs, it's definitely Haji Berry, and how influential and how killer he was, as a striker for Colorado. Then you've got, you had a really strong trident this year with Michin Galena, Haji Berry, and Elvis Amo. Then all of a sudden, there's the news that Haji Berry signs and is leaving Colorado right before the playoffs to go play in Egypt. How much of an impact did that have on the Switchbacks?
Obviously it's a big impact. 25 goals last year, 16-8 this year. It's not slight, production, is as much as we can rally around our guys. You can't act like that production's not there. It's one of those moves that, as a fan, I'm just constantly conflicted about. As a fan, it's terrible to see not only, one of your stellar players, it's also your team captain to leave right before the playoffs, especially the second year in a row, because, we all remember Michi Galena went on loan to LAFC last year. But on the other hand, the more that, like, I always try to approach things a little bit objectively at the same time, I get it from a business standpoint. It's, genuinely a club altering sum of money. Transfer market, I believe, had it listed at about $1 million. Unfortunately, USL league policy will never really know, but that is, by USL standards, that's club altering money. And then you have, just also the ramifications across the league, going from a $700,000 move to $1 million move. And now there's more leagues that are like looking at it. And I understand kind of the long-term moves of it, especially because as good as he is, he's he's almost 30. Realistically, as a club, it's the last chance you're going to get to cash in on him. And from his perspective, it's your last chance to make a move abroad, to push on and to do something else. And I'm never going to act like it was my favorite move, but at the same time, kind of as time goes on, I've learned, or at least managed to think about other reasons of why it was a good move and the way that the club can go forward from there.
Yeah, and it really affected the performance from the team as well. I think your record really wasn't very positive after, leading up to the announcement, and then even more after Haji Berry ends up leaving the Switchbacks to go to Egypt. And it's never a good sign when you go into the playoffs with less than positive momentum. And so what is your outlook for this upcoming match on Saturday?
I'm certainly tentative. Going in on kind of rough form is never what you want going into an elimination game. The New Mexico game, I think, was a little bit of a mixed bag when you look at, who was starring and who wasn't, and some of the formation moves. But at the same time, obviously that's never what you want, especially, against an extremely hot team coming into the playoffs, because you guys have been, really coming on late, and a team that kind of matches up well. I was looking over some of our last couple games and some of these stats and everything, and it's a pretty tight spread across some of the numbers.
And there is that we do have that match that was played recently last month, where Colorado came here to HB Park, and Colorado was unable to find a way to break apart the RGVFC the defense. I think they only had 2 shots on target throughout the whole match, and RGV, despite it only being a 1-0 final score, they had plenty of opportunities to kind of pad up the score. But had it not been for Jeff Caldwell, I think this would have been a result that would have been heard all around the USL Championship. So obviously, Colorado seem to have not been able to quickly figure out an alternative, whether it's a different play style, or whether it's formation, whatever, to kind of deal with not having the potential of not having Haji Berry, and then the confirmation that Haji Berry left Colorado. So it's very unfortunate. I think in my eyes for the Switchbacks, that the team finds themselves in a very unfortunate situation. And I guess if I want to quote a little bit of NASCAR, from Richard Childress Racing, when Tyler Reddick was announced for 2024 in 2311, they put is like, we're happy for him, but the timing of this announcement was not the best, So I think it's a similar situation. But honestly, I think I'm really looking forward to see how the Toros look into this match. Will they continue to kind of have the same outlook as they did here at home at HB Park, which is give Colorado the initiative of the attack, kind of hunker down in the back and try to, finding counterattacks to punish Colorado Springs? Obviously it's going to be a lot more difficult, because here at HB Park, you had the humidity in favor, you had the heat in favor, much lower elevation playing in your favor. And in Colorado, you've got much higher elevation you have to deal with. Obviously, it's completely different to the motivation of playing at home compared to playing at Colorado Springs and y'all's fans. But also, I think people need to understand the playoffs are a completely different animal, and anything can happen. I think whatever precedence there was from the regular season, I guess it's safe to say that it kind of goes out the window once you enter the playoffs.
So I don't necessarily think so, at least in terms of this game. So I was looking over a couple of things that I've noticed. The last 5 matches between RGV and Colorado Springs, it's almost always been, with the exception of, I think, the very 5th game, a 1-goal spread to the home team. And, to even a certain extent, to defend my boys a little bit, it's almost a completely different team now trying to play without Barry. As great as Barry is, as someone who, played for a long time as a defender, you plan around someone like that. And now that he's not there, sure, there's, one less guy to focus on, but now you can't necessarily pinpoint something where now before you can go, all right, clamp Haji Berry, the play runs through him, go from there. And now there's a little bit more of an emphasis on spreading the ball around distribution. And I think, it creates a different kind of caveat, because now as a defender, you're like, okay, instead of say just watching Barry, now I'm paying an extra mind to Cam. Now I'm paying an extra mind to Zach Zandy in midfield. And now I'm checking what Iro, who wasn't even, I believe, on either of those games, Iro Enriquez, the El Salvadorian.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's him to contend with. Elvis has kind of been on a little bit of a break with the red card. So he's rested. And to our credit, we're getting healthy at the right time. Macaulay King is finally, he's good to go and he's playing again. And we have a lot of new pieces, even since the last time that we played about a month ago.
So what do you think is going to be key, or what aspect do you think is going to be key for Colorado Springs to get the advantage over the Toros in this match?
I believe it's going to be mostly, I think, a lot of width play. Kind of with what you were mentioning, and RGV in the last game really sat back, hunkered in, and played, a very good low block, to their credit. But the nice thing with like a low block is there becomes a little bit more emphasis on some of your long ball play. And now that we have King and Sebastian Anderson from the Colorado Rapids, from, your fullback positions, who are able to do very different things from the last time that we played, as well as, still that fluid movement that we had with Barry, where Galena can drop in and Iro can move, and, Elvis Samo with his great positioning skills. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a width play because, going into it, I would have to imagine RGV is going to use effectively what was a very good game plan last time and go, we're going to sit back, we'll let them play the ball, let them beat themselves a little bit, but without just driving, head first into the center of your back line and hoping for the best. Now we have a little bit more of a stronger position on the width to be able to stretch the play, because once you're able to pull defenders out of that low block, now you can start playing underneath and start playing those channels that the switchbacks are very good at using.
Jacob?
Not much really else to kind of ask. Do you expect that there's going to be really good atmosphere, I guess, on Saturday night? Of course, I know y'all are used to the playoffs. RGVFC are kind of new to the playoffs, but what do you expect that atmosphere to be like for just supporting the players and anything like that?
Oh, it's going to be insane. While it's maybe not our first real dip into the playoffs, this is our first home playoff game in our new ground. So we have all of that, and that's, an 8,000 capacity stadium. Well, I guarantee you, we'll pack it out, and it's going to be a little bit colder. So everyone's going to kind of be a little bit more riled up and just really getting into like, this is, really the beginning of a true Colorado fall a little bit. So I think everyone will get a little bit more riled up, and, we've been doing our own job as a supporters group to make sure that, we're ready to go, and we'll back it for 2 hours after, so I can't imagine the home field is not going to be for lack of wanting. But I guess, if I'd ask you guys anything, how are you guys feeling going into, colder altitude, and even with all these other changes? I know, these are two teams that know each other very intimately, and up to and including some of these overlapping players that we have. But, there's a lot of new things, I think, for both teams going into this game. So I'm curious to see kind of how people who've maybe been into the USL scene a little bit longer than I have are thinking about it.
Jacob, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting for sure. I know, of course, the cold weather is always a change for the RGV in general. We just had a cold front here yesterday, and it kind of warmed up to the 70s today. So it was nice weather today. Yesterday was cold and miserable for us. It was in the mid 60s. So I bet you RGVFC were out practicing just to get used to that weather kind of. And it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a plus for RGVFC, not necessarily going up to higher altitude, but that they get an hour back. Basically, of course, getting that extra hour of rest might be a key thing for RGVFC when they get there on hopefully Friday night, and not another situation of getting there literally right before the game starts, like 3 hours before, like the last time that they went on the road. So just I don't know. This team they're much different considering veterans. Like, I've never seen this side of this team before, where all of a sudden, we were playing for our lives basically on Saturday for a bit. And this team, even after they clinched the playoffs, were pushing even more for another goal against Monterey Bay. So this team is going to come out to fight even in any sort of circumstance, which is just crazy to say, considering 2 years ago we didn't have this style of fight.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is that, unlike in previous years, this RGVFC is as good, if not a little bit better, on the road than at home. The tendency of this season. The last time we met at Whitener Field, keep in mind that we didn't have our two best players in the attack at the moment, which are Jonas Fjellberg and Christian Pinzon. RGV was somehow able to move the momentum back into their favor late in the second half. And they were really close to, completely cutting off a 3-goal advantage from Colorado. And now with, the firepower that we have up on top with Fjellberg, I want to say, like, I feel a lot more, a lot calmer going into this match than I was even last year going to Phoenix Rising, because I mean, statistically speaking, at least, like, everybody talks about that Colorado isn't one of the best defenses in the Western Conference. You've got this whole situation of trying to adapt without Haji Berry. Obviously, the weather plays against, and I've said it many times before. With the altitude, you've got thinner air, so the team cannot be making as much runs, or they can't exert too much force without getting tired quicker. So they have to play a little smarter in how they move around the field. Obviously, the touch on a ball, especially on a long ball, if you want to play in the counterattack, it has to be more precise. You can't use a lot of power because of the air being thinner. So with the same amount of force that you hit it here in the Rio Grande Valley, you're going to end up overshooting your target, and we saw that in previous years. So I think overall, I feel a little bit confident, not too confident. I'm definitely not one of those that says, oh, we're going to bash 5-0 or anything like that. Number one, because you have to always respect your rival, especially with a team that historically has a lot of firepower, like Colorado Springs. You're going to be playing in their turf with their conditions. So I'm just really excited to see what kind of fireworks on the field are displayed on Saturday.
It's certainly going to have something. I also think there is, kind of with what you were mentioning with some of the age in the team and the maturity that comes with that. Colorado Springs are on average a very young team. So I think there is a certain amount of, especially with somehow some of these games this year have gone a bit of a chip on the shoulder to prove that, like, hey, we are still this team that did these incredible things at the start of the year, and we're all here now and we're all ready to go. And obviously, missing a big player is always unfortunate, but, one player doesn't define a team. Mm-hmm. And I think, there's really a potential to rally around that mentality of, like, hey man, like, Haji left, everyone counted us out, but we're bigger than that. And we're bigger than this. And at home, even with kind of what you were saying about the turf, the Switchbacks turf is a very kind of unique structure. I believe it's made of cork. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of sometimes why they struggle playing away from home, is I think you kind of take it for granted a little bit because that ball moves fast on that turf. Yeah. And that's why sometimes they're able to really take it to teams, because if even with the air and the combination of the field, I think guys that aren't used to it, it's easy to step in and then you go, oh, wow, that ball's moving fast. So I think, there's going to be a very specific intensity of a bunch of young dudes with a chip on their shoulder going, hey man, like, everyone is saying we're done already and we haven't kicked the ball yet. So I'm hoping, and I believe that, they're really going to attack it and not let up, even amongst, that 3-2 game earlier in the year. I do think there is sometimes a bit of a tendency, especially with a 3-goal lead, where you go, all right, let's try to, like, step back. Let's think about it. And sometimes that's not always a good thing. I mean, it's good to be mindful of playing with a lead, but sometimes it can be, a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. And I think there are games I can, point out, honestly, a couple of them throughout the year that they didn't necessarily have last year, because last year, no matter what happened, they were, pedal down, foot on the throat. They were like, does not matter the minute, does not matter the scoreline. We are going for another one.
So there's a question that was placed in our YouTube chat that I want to present to everybody here in this table, virtual table per se. South Texas Motorsports, our friend Ray Silva, he asks, if this game goes to extra time, who is at a bigger disadvantage, Colorado or RGV? Ben, you can take the honors.
I'm going to go ahead and say RGV, especially with the weather and especially with the altitude. You can plan for it all you want, but when you get that combo of cold and altitude, it sucks the air out. You can train in cold, but you can't train in cold altitude. And when there's cold altitude, there's just no air. And I think that if it were to go to extra time, I got to really kind of back the Switchbacks, because they're just better conditioned for that weather and the familiarity of the field. And I think it opens up the possibility, but at the same time, once again, RGV has much more like the age and the maturity of keeping guys grounded, of keeping guys like, all right, focus on your task, focus on your assignment, and we'll get through. So I would back the Switchbacks, but much like everything else in this game, it's not by a big margin.
Jacob?
Oh, I have to agree with him a lot. It is true. I can vouch for that statement exactly. Being in Aspen Snowmass a couple of times at night, just up in TOV is what they call it, at top of the village, and at night just not necessarily having as much to breathe, because of course, I'm from down here, but besides that, it's just, it will be tough. I think RGVFC has a disadvantage as well with just not necessarily having as many players to substitute at times if they were to already use up a lot of their substitutes. And again, it is away from home. Yeah, it would also have to be what happened in that first half. Has any players from either side gone down with maybe an injury, possibly, or anything like that? Or is somebody on a yellow card that could be forced to be substituted early on? So things could definitely play into who could take it in extra time. But for sure, of course, you have to give it to Colorado Springs if it were to go into extra time, just because of what he said. It's altitude. You're up in a different place, and you definitely can't really train too much for that specific circumstance, unless you were just to literally hold your breath, and that wouldn't really last too long either.
Yeah.
I got on personal experience the amount of times, you go on a long run or something and you're done and you're like, okay. And then especially up here, and they're like, all right, we're going to do one more sprint. You're just like, oh, please, it's 10 degrees. I can't, there's nothing I can bring in anymore. Granted, they're definitely in much better shape than I am, but
No, and I agree. I agree with both of you. I really do think that the advantage is on Colorado Springs. If this were to go to overtime, and this is why I mentioned this. Obviously, Jacob and you all have mentioned the climate and the altitude. But here's another thing. The Toros have been in extra time between last year and this year. We've been in extra time twice, right? Well, actually, no, just once, which was against Phoenix Rising last season in the playoffs. Do you remember how tired they were, like during stoppage time, Jacob? Like they couldn't run anymore. Somehow they were able to kind of hold on and get that penalty kick in favor that gave them the equalizer, and just kind of hold the punches, because honestly, like they were extremely tired. And then in the beginning of the season, if you remember in Open Cup, Jacob,
Oh yeah.
I know this is a completely different moment of the season, but you saw that RGV at that time they had issues with fatigue because of all those games that they had. You had Open Cup the week before, then you had games that were midweek in the USL Championship, and then in the weekend as well, and then coming back to play the Dynamo in the Open Cup. And while in this game we don't have a lot of load because we do have a complete week of rest going into this, it's gonna be a huge toll for RGV to be able to last the plus 90 minutes, like the 120 minutes in such a harsh environment like it is Colorado, because upon normal circumstances they've gotten a lot fitter, but you throw in something like this and then you got to go for 120. It's like it's gonna put their bodies to the test, and the fact that Colorado is more climatized to that environment, that's going to pay huge dividends for them. There's a whole reason why it is home field advantage for them to play at Whitener Field. So yeah, I agree. The advantage will be for Colorado, which is why it's key for RGV that they have to finish this game in the first 90 minutes. Because and even someone from Abraham Moreno from our chat, he says, yeah, RGV is going to be at a disadvantage. Some of our starters will be exhausted way before then.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen Juan David Cabezas like exhausted? Because he's not a young player, right? How many times have we seen Gringo Torres, exhausted at times? He's barely coming off of 100% from his injury earlier this season. He talked about it after the Monterey Bay match as well last Saturday. So it's going to be pretty interesting. I can't wait for the referee to blow his whistle for the start of this match. I think it's going to be one of those games, guys, where you are not going to be able to sit down because you're going to be so nervous what's going on through the match. Even if you got like a 2-0 lead or something, like know that each team has their characteristics that even a 2-0 is not enough to be able to say that, oh, they're done for, right?
Hey, 3-0 is barely enough the last time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think had it been 10 more minutes in that game, RGV could have equalized. I know Ray himself mentioned we did miss a penalty too. So, we were extremely close. But it's going to be a fun match this Saturday. But Ben, do you have? Oh, actually, before we do that, we have to go into what is our tradition. And that is we give our regular prediction and then the traditional bold prediction, which is the most outlandish prediction you can think of for this upcoming game on Saturday. So
all right, first, I got one in the chamber for that one then.
All right,
I already know exactly what I'm doing for my hot take. Piping
hot
right. Take.
All right, so we'll go ahead and start with a regular prediction. Ben, what's your regular prediction for this match?
So considering everything that I looked into over the last couple of games and the nature of this game, no matter what, it's going to be a 1-goal game. I'm going to go down to say 1-0 Colorado, maybe 2-1, but I certainly don't see a whole lot in it. And I also could very much 100% going to be like a second half goal where the longer that, RGV would have to sort of chase the game a little bit, the more it's going to play into our hands. And I do think it's going to be frustratingly tight. Desperately hope it's not that contentious, but I'm gonna say 1-0 Colorado.
Jacob,
regular prediction. I think both these teams can score a lot. I think it's going to be the same score as when we were on the road there, 3-2. And it pains me to say this. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Colorado Springs. They eke it out at the end. Like RGVFC just run out of steam and Colorado Springs capitalize for the first time in a bit.
So 2-1 Colorado?
3-2 Colorado.
3-2 Colorado.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with 2-0 because I do have a lot of faith in our attack and our defense. Outside of the occasional lack of concentration, like in the very last second against Monterey Bay, they're really tight. Jonathan Ricketts has been at his best for these last couple of weeks. So has, Wahab Akwe coming in with rest, along with Erik Pimentel. And even then, like, even if you don't play Pimentel or Frank or Wahab Akwe, you've got Frank Nodarse has been playing lights out these last couple of weeks. So no matter where you look at it, RGV has a very solid defense to face off against RGV, against Colorado. Add that to the fact that they are very what's the word I'm looking for? But they can adapt real quickly. Like, let's say there's times that Wilmer will use a line of 5, and you bring in an extra center back, and they're able. And you saw that against Colorado in that 1-0 game where they decided to bring in Erik Pimentel and help the holding off Colorado Springs attack at the very end. So I really do think, with the struggles that offensively Colorado has been having, the struggles defensively that has been a tendency year round, I do think that it could be a 2-0. We'll go against the tendency of the last couple of games between these two teams. But I think if there's one moment where tendency will be broken, it's going to be in a playoff match. So 2-0 for me. So now we go into our bold prediction, and Ben, you said you already had one ready. Let's hear it.
I've been sitting on this one. So, okay, my bold prediction, like if I'm just gonna, take off all the reasonableness of this, I could see, I'm saying like a 4-0, like an early goal, because I think Galena is coming into especially this playoff run with a point to prove that he is next. That, like, everyone wrote, I feel like, him particularly off without, oh, you don't have your partner in Barry anymore. And I think if there was to say maybe be a bit of a lucky early 10 goal or something like that, and RGV were to have to chase, I really think Galena is going to come out guns blazing and really put a marker down to not only the West, but the USL and the MLS as a whole, going, hey, I'm the next one. So my piping hot take would genuinely be, I could see Galena just taking the ball himself and just doing everything. I really can.
And so your take is Galena's gonna be on fire. But
oh yeah, absolutely. My piping hot take is I think Galena could single-handedly take this game over.
So considering that, what's your score prediction for that bold take?
4-0.
4-0.
Someone else gets like a random goal, maybe a Galena hat trick. I can just see him like, if you give him a head of steam, he is just going to take the ball and just bully everyone on the field for the next hour and a half.
Yeah, and like we say here, and like we say in Mexico, the ball is the tactician, or the goal is the tactician, which is, like you mentioned, if Colorado gets the early goal, and if RGV kind of reacts a little bit desperately to, obviously, if they're going to be holding back and Colorado scores the goal first, that's going to force RGV to move their lines higher up, which is going to open a lot more spaces for Galena to be able to take advantage of. So I see where you're going with this, but like you mentioned,
especially in the mindset of it's a one-off, and this idea that, maybe in another game you're like, all right, I'm not gonna sell the farm for this because there's a game 4 days from now. And I think depending on how that can go, really for both teams, if things start going bad early, there's going to get a panic to set in of like, we only have 60 minutes to change this. So I think especially an early goal throws off everybody, and now everyone is like, oh, now we got to do something. We have to seize it.
So Jacob, what's your bold prediction?
Bold prediction is totally weather related. What's going to happen is this forecast I'm looking at is going to be completely wrong. And yes, it is going to be sunny for like half a day, 72, beautiful. But in the evening time, that's where we will start to see some clouds. And yes, precipitation will happen. So it's going to be even colder and just the worst possible, just anything like, no snow, no ice or anything like that. No, just the rain and like the 40s.
Hey, it's Colorado. It can absolutely happen. Unfortunately, I can see it happening.
And so it's going to be a dogfight, and it's going to end in regulation 0-0, and then 1-0 sneak by some fluke play.
The bobble corner goal.
Yeah, so something crazy like RGVFC will score off of a short set piece like that. They won't even play it into the box. It's just going to be short, and I don't know.
So
One of our players
Ben,
will get it in the back.
so
of the
Ben,
net.
I have to tell you this.
All right.
Jacob's holding back.
Oh no, I can tell.
Jacob's holding up because usually he's like, oh, it's like it's gonna be raining and there's gonna be a lot of red cards, like 3 or 4, and the
end of the match is just going to be both coaches meet at midfield and settle it.
Someone's gonna put in a wrestling ring, and Wilmer Cabrera and Colorado's coach are gonna have at it. But yeah, okay, so for me, I think my bold prediction, I'm going to go with 5-0 Colorado.
All right. I mean, I like it.
Yeah. I think the way that RGV has been playing recently, it's going to be extremely bold for them to completely against, the tendency so far in these last couple of weeks, considering also that RGV never lost by more than 1 goal this season. So for them to completely crap the bed in playoffs with a 5-0 loss is going to be extremely bold. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the boldest thing that I can think of. So I'm going to go ahead and go with it. 5-0 RGV loss in Colorado. But Ben, we appreciate you coming on to talk to us a little bit about your switchbacks with us here in the Down in the Valley podcast. Where can they find you? Where can our audience find you?
So I know it's mentioned on your tweet, but I am on Twitter under KilledHooligan18. That's kind of, more of what I'm using for a lot of my soccer stuff. I'm in the middle of setting up some other things on a more professional landscape because I do some like audio engineering and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, that's kind of the main thing. You can also probably find me on any general form of Switchbacks media because I'm either tagged in it or commenting on it. Mm-hmm. So, I would say Twitter is probably the main spot. And then, I got a couple other things that are up in the works as I'm moving some pieces around.
So I'm seeing here, Mike says RGV 2-1 regular prediction, bold 4-2 RGV. Ray says 2-1 for RGV. He says, but I also think that RGV scores first and very early. Bold, it goes to extra time, but we fall in the shootout because we've missed too many PKs. Abraham says bold 3-1 RGV win. 3-1 RGV wins even though it starts snowing.
Again, unfortunately, it's Colorado. I can't say it's not going to happen.
Watch it be what was it that Jacob, that US national team versus Costa Rica levels of snowing?
Oh yeah,
oh my gosh.
That was up in Denver. I remember that.
Yeah. Denver. An hour
I was
away.
Actually at the Colorado Rapids and the Portland Timbers snow game. Probably 4 years ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, it had to have been longer now, but yeah, I was up at that. I mean, it's Colorado. You never really know. And I think if it were to go to penalties, I would also bank us. Caldwell's proven over the last 2 years he's one of the best goalkeepers on the spot in the league.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to be Colorado's final question? What do you think is going to be Colorado's weakness in this match? And I'll give you ours. Just so we can be in equal
I
terms.
will say the midfield. So Zandy and Cameron Lindley, they're both 100% and they're both wonderful. But the way that the system kind of works is there's sort of like a bit of a dual 8 situation. And the problem that I find a lot of the times is that the switchbacks don't quite have as strong as a pivot point in that midfield. So there becomes a lot of messy moments in transition between the back to the midfield and to the front, because there's not necessarily that key to keep the whole thing going, especially in a team where your fullbacks like getting up. So more often than not, if something goes wrong, your center backs are now isolated against the counter, and then things start getting problematic. So I would really, unfortunately, I would have to say that kind of defensive mid role, because I think if you can pressure them, like if I'm a coach and I'm playing against them, it's sit back and then just pressure on that 6th position and wait for them to make a mistake.
So I think for us, it kind of follows a similar line, but it's mostly on defense when it comes to when they play the high pressure on RGV. That's where RGV looks its worst. When we played San Antonio in the playoffs last year in the Western Conference semifinals, we completely lost it with San Antonio's high pressure. Against Louisville City, we had a lot of issues with the high pressure that it was hard for us to be able to what's the word I'm looking for, to adapt to. And other games as well in earlier this season where the opposing team played RGV with a high pressure, and that, football champagne, that beautiful the play and the passing, all of that was lost every time RGV was played the high pressure. So if that has to be our biggest weakness. That I don't know if Colorado's ever employed that before this season, if it's even worked for them, but that could be a key for Colorado to get a positive results against RGV. So,
yeah.
But guys, that's gonna be it for tonight. Jacob, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just looking forward to Saturday. Hopefully it's good for RGVFC. I mean, this is still an RGVFC podcast, but it's sports. You never know what will happen. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And Ben, thank you so much I know it was kind of almost from one day to the next, the invite over to the show, but I'm glad that you're able to come on, and I hope it's not the last time you come on to the Down in the Valley podcast to talk with us about your Colorado Springs Switchbacks. And if you do ever decide to make a podcast, like you mentioned, like you count with our support in whatever you need. And may the best team win on Saturday.
Yeah, guys, this was a lot of fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to the game. And hopefully I'll look a little bit more towards the bar after party.
Definitely. And Toros fans that are listening right now, before Saturday's match, the Toros will be hosting a watch party at Topgolf in FAR on the 3rd floor. So if you guys have any opportunity, don't know where to watch the Toros match, be sure to go over to the official watch party at Topgolf on Saturday. I will try to make plans to be there, and Jacob, I think he said he was going to try to as well. So if you see us there, don't be afraid. You say hi, and I might actually buy you a beer if you want. But guys, that's going to be it for this episode. Once again, Ben, thank you so much for hopping on. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on and co-hosting the show with me. It's not the same without you, man. I saw that I realized that in the first couple of minutes last week. Is like, I like that interaction is just a key piece of it. But y'all be safe out there, and hope to see you all on Saturday. And we'll see each other next week in another episode of the Down in the Valley podcast. Have a good night.